Vyasa Media Network.
I strongly believe that we must go into this sort of experiential setup, and we can
Right.
always take inspiration from something that is already applied somewhere else.
Right.
And this again reminds me, it's not that it hasn't happened before. This is how Gurukuls worked, right? There were no
Correct.
grades.
Correct.
There was no age appropriate learning as such. Of course, there might have been levels of learning,
Right.
but everybody learned together.
Right.
And it was never a classroom setup. They were out in the field learning whatever they needed to learn at that time. So if you look at like mythology, Mahabharata, Ramayana, if you see all of that, then if they were to be trained to be future kings, that's what they learned. They learned
True.
to be out there. They learned to fight. They learned how to shoot arrows. They learned all of that. But everything was done out there in the field.
Right.
And everybody learned together.
Right.
How do you think we went from that to, is it that we followed the West too much in terms of education and we started applying that way of education, or maybe the Industrial Revolution? And do you think, again, is it very hypothetical, or we could again step back into that form of learning, just imagining or just assuming what is this child going to face in the future, or what are the needs of this child as he grows into an adult or to face the world, and what are the things that he needs to learn? Because as we sit in classrooms, one thing definitely we are missing out on everything that you mentioned. It is boring. It is too structured for children. They have very less space to express themselves. But at the same time, they're also missing on important components like sunlight, air.
Correct.
And that leads to, again, killing their creativity, because it is so
True.
mundane that they don't have that space to ignite their creative cells.
Right. I think I'll answer your question in two ways, in two parts. So, what led to this kind of an education system? I think I'm no history expert, but with rapid colonization of a few major, European powers or Latin American powers, they brought their system of thinking, organization to the countries that were occupied, for sure. So once you talk about our part of the world, I mean, we've been colonized by the Portuguese, the larger part of the Southeast Asian continent, by Spain, by Britain, by France. Many colonies still exist. So definitely the Western way of thinking has influenced. I mean, as you said, the Gurukul system was working perfectly for India, and Bharat, as we know, in erstwhile history. So if that portion of the world could learn and be successful, at what success? I mean, then it comes to what success is really, because the Western definition of success, structured success, maybe was not existing in our part of the world. However, if smaller fiefdoms or kingdoms were considered successful, then we are pretty successful as separate nations coexisting in harmony or disharmony, perhaps. So if education was brought into focus to create harmony and standardization, that is exactly what has happened. Standardization has its own, positive aspects, but it also has many disconnects. So once we have been structured into a system of organization and we went into the Industrial Revolution, the structured system made sure that appropriate human resource was being generated by the school system, where they learned structured subjects and they were made experts at doing certain aspects of industrial jobs. And that's how we evolved.
Vyasa Media Network.